Compendium Podcast hosted by Leadership Books. In just a moment, our host, Joseph Baker, will be joining us, along with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Joseph. He's a podcaster, event producer, writer, speaker, and audience builder. His passion is to help authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs build their audiences to monetize their leadership. Won't you please welcome our host, Joseph Baker.
Well, thanks so much for that intro. Welcome, everyone, to the Compendium Podcast. I am here today with Justin Skinner. Justin grew up in Springfield, Missouri, on a dairy farm just north of the city limits. He's the oldest of 4 children and married to Kendra Joy Skinner. They currently live in Springfield with their little Morkie-Poo Daisy. We'll have to talk about that, exactly what is a Morkie-Poo. And they love spending time with family and enjoy playing all types of board games as well as pickleball. Soon after college and getting fired from a job, we'll have to find out what that was about, Justin and Kendra started their own business in Springfield. Together, they also began investing in real estate and running short-term rentals. Justin and Kendra still operate short-term rentals to this day and continue to invest when the right opportunity presents itself. Justin enjoys reading and writing, traveling with Kendra, and continues to learn from the amazing people around him. Justin, what a great intro, and welcome to the Compendium Podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Just right off the bat, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us, what are you up to these days? What are you excited about?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing actually is we're doing something that's a little intimidating for us. We're taking a sabbatical here in the month of July, and we've never done that before, but we've had some mentors actually in the Dallas area that have encouraged us to do this for many years, almost a decade. And finally, we heeded their wisdom, and we're going to take a month off and kind of travel a little bit and then maybe just unplug from work. So excited about that. That's the biggest thing. And then we're still running, Airbnbs, and we still have real estate, things like that. And then I'm running my podcast and doing the book. So that's taking some time, but it's kind of a fun little moment in time right now. So we're enjoying it.
That's great. Now, you teased us in your intro, getting fired from a job, which you just kind of drop in there, probably for this reason, right? It gives us something fun to talk about. But tell us that story. What happened?
Yeah. So out of college, it's kind of funny. So I played baseball. I wound up getting a design degree in college. And so right out of college, I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have my 4-year degree. I'm going to get a job. And the place I wanted to work at actually said, you need 2 years experience to work here. And I thought, well, that's weird. I just spent 4 years in college getting this and now I can't. So fast forward, I wound up working at a marketing company for a couple of years and then a publishing company. And it was at this publishing company that I was working and, it was fine. They were actually out of Arkansas. And one Monday morning, I got a call and just said, "Hey, we've decided to go a different direction. We're gonna have to let you go." And I thought, "Huh." And a month before that, my wife had actually quit her job, so we went from 2 incomes to basically 0 in 4 weeks. And so I sat there I think it was 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in my home office. And I kind of leaned back and I yelled at Kendra and I said, "Hey, guess what? I just got fired." She came in and she's like, "What?" So I said, "Well, we are going to start our own business." We had been running some things on the side and doing some freelance work. And I think we had some momentum there. So we just decided right then and there that we really didn't want to put our careers or our futures in the lives of, working for someone else. So at that point, we started our own creative agency and we did commercial photography and graphic design. And we ran that for 10 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a catalyst moment like that that's not fun, that's not comfortable, to push you over the edge, into your future. How long did that "oh no" kind of a moment last versus when you flipped into entrepreneur mode? What was that like for you?
It's kind of funny. My wife thought my wife thinks I'm weird, which is fine, but I think she thought I was over it way too fast. And I think maybe I've been like conditioned or taught to get over things quickly, but it was really probably 15 minutes where I kind of felt sorry for myself. I thought, ugh, I just got fired. I've never been fired before. Am I a failure? And then after about those 15 minutes, I was like, nope, I'm gonna bet on myself and my wife, and we're gonna go and we're gonna start our own thing, and whatever happens, happens.
That's awesome. So in one sense, it could have been the best thing that happened to you.
Absolutely. I like to say it was God kind of kicking us in the butt, kicking us out the door, and pushing us in the direction we needed to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So this idea of failure actually leads us to your book. Your book is entitled Professional Failure. It's a thought-provoking book about leaning into and learning from mistakes while helping others along the way. The path to success is not built on perfection, but by the bricks of failures and lessons learned. Failures are not something to be avoided, but they should be welcomed with open arms. So I assume that this one experience was one of your failures that probably led
Yeah.
to this book. Before we even get into the book, like what else led you to this book? What was that journey like as you approached that writing process?
Yeah, I think it's multiple things. It's not just one event, which is fun. But maybe the biggest thing was after college, and it was prior to actually me getting fired from the job. I was playing college baseball. I had always had a dream since I was 2 years old to play professional baseball, and it was something that I felt like was kind of leaning that direction. So I actually wound up playing in an Alaskan baseball league in between my junior and senior year, and had a lot of success up there and played really well and played against some top D1 guys and wound up making the all-star team, and our team wound up winning the championship, and we just had a great summer. So a lot of those guys from that team wound up getting drafted, and I know there was a couple that actually, there was one that played, Kirk Neuenhuis, that played in the major leagues for a while, and I hit right behind him in the batting order. So I just assumed that's the way my life was leaning. So wound up getting a tryout with the Cubs after my senior year, and they said, we like you. Here's a draft number. We'll talk to you on draft day. So we felt like, we had just been married. Kendra and I were just getting married, and we were talking through what it would look like, um, as a travel athlete, as a professional athlete. So I just felt like everything was headed in that direction. That's what my life was supposed to be. I was going to be, in professional baseball. My best friend growing up was a high draft pick. He was in professional baseball. I just assumed that's what was going to happen. And then fast forward to draft day, wound up, I knew I wouldn't get drafted early, which I was fine with. I just needed the chance to get in the system. And I think around 30 or 33 or something, I wound up seeing the Cubs draft, a kid out of high school. And at that point, I realized, this probably isn't going to happen. So shut my laptop. I cried for about 5 minutes, same thing. And then I kind of just picked myself up, and I thought, I'm not a failure. But I'm going to have to move on. We're going to have to do something. So it was weird. I had this weird peace about being done with baseball, even though it hurt, even though it was a lifelong dream and just, crushed in a matter of minutes, it felt like. But I just had this piece about not playing anymore, and going on and taking everything I had learned and all the skills I had learned and character traits I had built up over 18 years, and just transferring those to the next phase of my life.
That's great. And you talk about starting a business. Now, I know part of what you do is in real estate investing, but what is your primary business these days? What did you start, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the graphic design started. We ran that for about 10 years. We technically still have that LLC, and that's what we run a lot of stuff through. But what had happened is we wound up buying the building that we were leasing, and then we kind of fell into Airbnb, and then we fell into real estate. And then the more I learned about real estate, the more we saw the tax advantage of real estate. We kept investing in real estate. So the bulk of my time right now, we've kind of stepped away from a lot of our design things, but those same skills have helped me in a lot of different areas, either in real estate or now with the podcast, or with the book. I wound up laying out my own book, which my publisher thought, didn't think that was a good idea in the beginning. But I promised him, like, hey, I have a background in this. I want to do this. So for me, I love creating, and I've learned that about myself. My wife loves creating. We love creating together. So for us, just that process of creating. So you ask about what we're doing now. I think the process of the podcast that I'm running, the book, it's all a matter of just creating and putting hopefully good, positive content out in the world. So between that and real estate, our days never look the same, which is fun. Can also be tricky, but for the most part, we enjoy what we do.
That's great. Yeah, content creation and marketing will always be helpful regardless of the industry that you're in. And so it's not surprising that just rolls right into your next ventures. That's awesome.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit more about the book. So Professional Failure.
Yeah.
What are you hoping that people will walk away with? So if somebody picks up your book, they read it, they love it. How are you hoping that it will impact their life?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I really want to encourage people to action, and I want people to drop that fear that they have of just trying. And I think that's the biggest hindrance in a lot of people's lives is that they try something and they're really hard on themselves and like, I'm terrible, I'm an idiot. That's why I did this. I shouldn't do that. So for me, I would love for someone to read the book, put it down, and say, what is there? What have I not tried, or what have I been scared of trying? That I can go out and try. And I just love the concept. I don't know what's going to happen in their lives. I don't know what's going to happen in my life, but just that process of trying, I feel like leads to numerous opportunities in people's lives. That's what I want to encourage people because I love how stories of failure, and this is what's been fun with the podcast, different stories of failure resonate with different people. So I think if people try and they go out and they experience their own story of failure, it's going to resonate and they're going to make connections and relationships based on that. And then new opportunities are going to come from that. So that's my hope, to encourage people to action.
That's awesome. As you were speaking, I'm reminded of a similar story, even just in my own life, as far as, experiencing a failure, but embracing it. One of the ventures that I actually tried for about 6 months was actually a staffing agency. I've worked with some overseas virtual assistants, and I thought, well, I'm going to try to help people, get placed, and then even some US based staffing stuff that I was doing. And the truth is, it never really got wings. But I spent several months really grinding it out. Got really much more comfortable on the phone than I had ever been, and just learned some software and some skills that honestly, I closed that little business down, that little venture down, after about 6 months. But some of the skills and experience that I learned in that immediately translated into my next ventures, and I was so much ahead of the game. And some other things that I was doing that had nothing to do with staffing, nothing to do with staffing at all, but some of the email marketing that I had learned and just some of the phone skills and things like that. And so even though I spent several $1,000s of my own money, I put this new brand out there, it didn't take wings. The reality is I actually don't look at that as a failure. I look at that as a learning experience that I am better for. And so I definitely resonate with that concept.
Exactly. And I love that, Jess. I love that example too, because I think that's a lot of people maybe get caught up in the moment and they get caught up in the failure. And I love how you say that you don't see failures as failures, more as lessons. I'm the same way. But I love how you said you learned skills that translated into your next opportunity. And that's what I think people miss sometimes is they look at 2 years of their life and they're like, well, I'm not going to waste all this time doing this. But instead, if they just shifted or pivoted, they could take those same skills and they could leverage them into some new opportunity. So I love that story.
Absolutely. So as far as the book is concerned, what does that lead to for you? Are you doing any consulting? Are you doing speaking, coaching? What has that
Yeah.
led to for you these days?
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to be the keynote speaker at a prayer breakfast here in Springfield recently and spoke in front of 500 people. So that was amazing. That's getting me out of my comfort zone. To be honest, on the way up, I thought I was going to puke and poop my pants all at the same time. So working through that was really helpful. So it's led to that. I've got another opportunity to speak this fall, and then just doing different podcasts, and I love just the conversations that it's led to. So either on the podcast with people across the country or with the book, I love hearing stories of here locally, people saying, hey, I read your book, I love this, and here's what I'm going to do. I actually had an example of a good friend who he's an older guy. I think he's 70, 75. Anyway, he read it. He was like the first one of my book signing, super supportive. And he read it and he just said, I've always wanted to start a podcast and tell stories. And I think I'm going to do it now. And I think just that again, encouraging people to action. I mean, he's a wise man and he has so much to offer, but I think too often people maybe discount their story or what they have to offer. And so they just don't act, and like, why me? Who am I to do this? So I think the conversations that the book has led to has been really, really beneficial and really fun for me.
For our listening and viewing audience, for those of us that want to connect with you online, where would we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. So my handle is at Justin C. Skinner. And then you can find out more info on the podcast or the book at www.professional-failure.com.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, for joining us today for this episode of the Compendium Podcast. We wish you the best of luck with your book and all your ventures and your investments. You've got a lot going on, but that is the life of the entrepreneur, yes?
Absolutely. Well, Joseph, thanks so much for having me. I've loved being here.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium Podcast.